And as Gorsuch heads to Capitol Hill, he's there now. Of course, we saw lawmakers. They're expressing their feelings on President Trump's Supreme Court pick. One America's John Hines caught up with Utah Senator Mike Lee and has this report.
Hello, good to talk to you. Yes, I'm with Senator Mike Lee of Utah. Of course, he is a member of the Judiciary Committee. He was at the announcement last night of the White House. And Senator, your thoughts on this choice?
This is a fantastic pick. This is a judge that I've had the privilege of arguing cases in front of, and I think he's extraordinary. He's a textualist and he's an originalist, meaning he interprets the law based on what the law says, based on what the words in the law mean, rather than what he wishes they meant. And that's exactly the kind of person we need on the U.S. Supreme Court. I look forward to getting him confirmed.
Now, this seat has become known in some circles as the Scalia seat, I guess. Talk about how he may or may not follow in that tradition, in your view.
Well, I believe he does follow in that tradition. Something extraordinary has happened over the last 30 years since Antonin Scalia was put on the Supreme Court. Justice Scalia has himself revolutionized the way we think about the Constitution, the way we talk about the Constitution and the law in this country, not just among lawyers and judges and law professors, but among the people generally. And Neil Gorsuch is kind of an heir to that legacy. He is someone who believes that we need to look at the words in the Constitution. We need to understand how they were understood at the time they were drafted, at the time they were ratified. And that's an important part of American jurisprudence.
Speaking of looking at the Constitution, this is something you've spent some time with. You've even written a book, Our Lost Constitution, in which you talk about provisions of the Constitution which have been ignored or sublimated in our modern interpretation. Talk a little bit about one. You're also an Article 1 person. Talk about a little bit how he stacks up in terms of that notion of the courts deferring to the executive branch in interpretation of rules and regulations. It's something you've spoken about. What is your feeling on how he would come down on that part of the Constitution, Article 1?
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing up the Article 1 project. Thanks for bringing up Article 1 and for referring to our lost Constitution. Yeah, Judge Gorsuch has written a number of opinions regarding the Article 1 power, regarding separation of powers. I've spent a lot of time reading through Judge Gorsuch opinions, and I've been very pleased with what I've seen. He's talked a lot about separation of powers. He's talked a lot about the fact that there are some problems with simply having the court say we're going to defer to an agency's own interpretation of its own regulation, which is itself implementing a statute enacted by Congress. But why should the agency receive any more deference than anyone else in that? It's a little bit like letting the fox guard the hen house. So I like the fact that he has raised a skeptical eye in response to some of these Article 1 problems. It's time for us to restore Congress's power as the lawmaking organ within the federal government. Not because Congress is great, but because Congress is the only entity authorized to do that by the Constitution, and because Congress, unlike the courts, is accountable to the people at regular intervals through elections. And in that respect, it's different not only from the courts, but also from the executive branch agencies.
So it looks like you might respect things like Article 1. Talk a little bit finally about the mechanics and the timing. The Democrats have threatened to block this nominee because of the Merrick Garland situation. And then there's the issue of this so-called nuclear option where I guess Senator McConnell could break the filibuster. Talk about that a little bit, sir.
Sure. The modern historical average for confirmation of a Supreme Court nominee from the moment of nomination to the moment of confirmation is, I believe, 74 days. The modern historical record was Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the early 1990s, who clocked in at around 50 days. I would hope that we could get this done in a period of time not exceeding the historical average and perhaps something closer to the modern historical record. It's going to take certainly a few weeks to get this done, but there will be hearings in front of the Judiciary Committee. Members of the committee will have the opportunity to ask questions to Judge Gorsuch, and I look forward to getting that done, and eventually we'll move it to the floor. Look, there are a lot of moving parts in this. We are convinced that we're going to get Judge Gorsuch confirmed. We're not entirely certain what the mechanics of that will be, but we're determined to make sure that this nominee gets confirmed, and that's going to happen.
That's the final word from Senator Mike Lee, a Republican from Utah, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He will be voting on Justice Gorsuch to be confirmed to the Supreme Court in the committee, and I presume on the floor as well, saying he is in many ways an heir to the Scalia notion of interpreting the Constitution or being an originalist with respect to the Constitution.